car fixed yet? It's the Studebaker. Yeah, you know, the one with the little doggy in the window that goes...
Carol Burnett is remembered as one of the funniest women in the history of American television. She made audiences laugh for over a decade with the Carol Burnett Show, but there is one part of her long career that she has never been able to laugh about. In fact, there is one episode from 1977 that she refuses to watch, even though critics called it brilliant. It is strange to imagine that someone who brought so much joy to others could not bear to revisit her own work. Why? To answer that, we need to go back to the beginning of Carol's life, because the roots of that emotional performance are buried deep in her own story. Carol Burnett was born on April 26, 1933, in San Antonio, Texas. From the start, her life was not easy. Her parents both struggled with alcohol, and they were not able to give her the kind of safe, stable childhood every child deserves. Her father worked in movie theaters but could not keep jobs because of drinking. Her mother had big dreams of being a writer but spent much of her life drinking as well. When Carol was still a very young child, her parents' drinking left her feeling unwanted and unloved. Both of them would later die from alcohol-related problems, but even before that, Carol carried the deep pain of knowing her parents chose alcohol over her. This sense of being unwanted shaped the way she looked at the world and the way she tried to survive it. As a little girl, Carol learned that laughter could be a shield. When the world felt too sad or too uncertain, she could turn to humor and imagination. Eventually, when her parents completely gave up on caring for her, Carol went to live with her grandmother, Mabel White. Mabel may not have had much money, but she gave Carol something her parents never could: unconditional love. That love became the foundation Carol needed to survive all the hard years ahead. In 1940, when Carol was just 7 years old, she and her grandmother moved to Hollywood. The move might sound glamorous, but there was no Hollywood dream waiting for them. They ended up living in a single small room in a rundown boarding house filled with people struggling with their own problems, addicts, people with mental health struggles, and families living off welfare. Carol and her grandmother survived on only $20 a week, barely enough for food. Even in that hard environment, Carol created her own escape. She invented an imaginary twin sister named Karen. Karen was everything Carol wasn't: confident, stylish, and always cheerful. Carol committed to the character so much that she would run up the fire escape, change clothes, and come back pretending to be Karen. The other people in the building actually believed Karen was real. It was an early performance, a playful trick, but it also showed how badly Carol wanted to step outside of her painful reality. That act of pretending was not just a game, it was her first taste of the power of performance. Another escape for Carol came from the movies. Every Saturday, she and her grandmother went to the cinema. Tickets cost 25 cents for both of them, which was more than 10% of their weekly income, but her grandmother thought it was worth it. For a few hours, Carol could sit in the dark theater and watch glamorous stars dance, sing, and live lives full of beauty and love. She would leave those shows inspired, though reality always came rushing back. At home, she and her grandmother sometimes could not even afford toilet paper, so they quietly took some from the theater bathroom. They weren't trying to be dishonest, they were simply desperate to survive. That mix of hunger and hope became a constant part of Carol's early life. One day, when she was watching a Tarzan movie, Carol heard Johnny Weissmuller's famous jungle yell echo through the theater. Something about it stuck with her. At home, she practiced it over and over again, without knowing she was building breath control and training her voice. Years later, that Tarzan yell would become one of her signature comedy bits, one that audiences begged her to repeat. But at the time, it was just a child's playful escape from the sadness of everyday life. By the time Carol finished high school, she thought her future would be in writing, not performing. She wanted to study journalism at UCLA because her mother had always dreamed of being a writer. But when it came time to pay tuition, Carol didn't even have the $50 fee required to enroll. For a while, it seemed her dream was over before it started. Then, in one of the most mysterious and life-changing moments of her life, a stranger stepped in. To this day, Carol doesn't know who it was, but someone gave her the money she needed to cover tuition. That single act of kindness opened the door to her college education. Carol went to UCLA planning to study journalism, but something unexpected happened. She took one elective theater class, and suddenly, her whole world changed. On stage, she felt alive in a way she had never felt before. She wasn't the shy, poor girl anymore. She was bold, funny, and powerful. Her classmates and professors noticed her talent immediately. She had a gift for acting and comedy that could not be ignored. By the end of her freshman year, she had already been named the most promising newcomer in the theater program. It was a small award, but for Carol, it was life-changing. For the first time, she believed she wasn't crazy for dreaming big, but dreams still required money, and money was something Carol and her grandmother didn't have. Carol worked jobs to survive, including ushering at theaters for 65 cents an hour. In 1954, at a party in San Diego, Carol's life took another unbelievable turn. She met a wealthy shipbuilder who wasn't part of show business at all. After hearing her story, he gave her and her boyfriend $1,000 each, on 3 conditions. First, they could never reveal his name. Second, they had to use the money only to go to New York and chase their dreams. And third, if they made it, they had to pay it forward and help others. That $2,000 gave Carol the chance to leave UCLA and head to New York, even though she had never been further east than Texas. This early part of Carol's life is crucial because it explains why the 1977 sketch she filmed years later hit her so hard. All the pain of being abandoned, all the hunger, and all the pretending to be okay lived inside her. And while comedy helped her survive, there was still a part of her that hurt too much to face. That's the same pain that would eventually surface on national television in the one episode she could never watch again. In 1977, Carol Burnett filmed a sketch that left audiences stunned. It wasn't her usual type of performance filled with laughter, jokes, or the playful chaos that fans had come to love. Instead, it was deeply sad, emotional, and painfully real. The sketch was part of a recurring series called The Family, where Carol played a character named Eunice Higgins. Normally, these sketches mixed comedy and dysfunction, showing a Southern family constantly at odds. But this time was different. In a sketch called The Gong Show, Eunice thought her big break in life had finally come. She believed that singing on a talent show would lead her to fame and success. But instead of finding joy, she was ridiculed by the judges, played partly by a real-life television host. There was no funny accent, no silly body language, and no comedic escape. Instead, viewers saw a woman with crushed dreams, staring at the camera with tear-filled eyes. The scene ended in silence, and the audience at home felt a gut punch. Critics praised it as powerful, but Carol Burnett herself could never bring herself to watch it again. For her, it was far too personal. It brought back memories of her own disappointments, her childhood poverty, and the times when her own big dreams felt impossible. In interviews years later, she explained that Eunice's pain mirrored her own. That was why, even decades later, she still refused to rewatch the performance. But to understand why that one sketch hurt so much, we need to look at Carol Burnett's incredible journey. Carol Burnett was born on April 26, 1933, in San Antonio, Texas. Her childhood was not easy. Her parents struggled with alcoholism, and her family life was unstable. Eventually, her parents separated, and young Carol was raised by her grandmother in a modest apartment in Hollywood. They lived in poverty, often surviving on very little. Carol has said in interviews that they would sometimes eat canned food for days at a time. Despite these challenges, she developed a love for movies and dreamed of performing on stage. She would often mimic actors and create characters in front of her grandmother, who encouraged her talents. Even though money was scarce, her grandmother supported her dream of going to college. Carol attended UCLA, where she studied theater and English. It was at UCLA that she began to realize her gift for comedy and performance. She had a natural ability to make people laugh, and that set her apart from many others who were chasing the same dream. After college, Carol faced a crossroads. She wanted to go to New York to pursue a career in theater, but she had no money. This was when something remarkable happened. A mysterious benefactor, someone she barely knew, gave her $1,000 to move to New York on the condition that she pay it forward to someone else someday. Carol accepted the offer, moved to New York, and began her career. At first, she worked small roles, appearing in nightclubs and doing odd performances to get by. But soon, her talent shone through. Her big break came on Broadway in 1959 with a musical called Once Upon a Mattress. At first, critics didn't think much of the show, but audiences loved it, especially Carol's performance. Her comedic timing, her ability to play both awkward and endearing characters, and her powerful stage presence turned the show into a success. It ran for over 400 performances, and Carol became irreplaceable. When she left the cast, the show closed within a week. That proved how much of a star she was becoming. Carol's next breakthrough came on television. She joined The Gary Moore Show in 1959, and it was here that she really became a household name. She created characters, including a cleaning lady that became iconic. Her appearances on the show earned her an Emmy Award in 1962, and more importantly, it taught her lessons about connecting with audiences. The host, Gary Moore, often warmed up the audience with unscripted Q&A sessions. Carol later used this idea on her own show, creating a special bond with fans by speaking directly to them before episodes. During this time, she also built relationships with other rising stars, including Don Knotts and Jonathan Winters, who would later become comedy legends themselves. Carol had moved from being a hopeful actress to a rising television powerhouse. She was proving that she had the skill, charm, and determination to break into an industry dominated by men. By the early 1960s, Carol was gaining more recognition. In 1962, she starred in a special with Julie Andrews at Carnegie Hall. Interestingly, CBS executives didn't want to approve the special at first. They didn't think Julie Andrews was famous enough, and they worried Carol was already on TV too often. But a twist of fate changed everything. One night, Carol joked to two network executives about struggling to catch a taxi. Suddenly, a truck pulled up, and the driver offered her a ride. The executives took it as a sign and approved the project. The special, Julie and Carol at Carnegie Hall, became a huge success, winning awards and even earning a spot on the music charts with its soundtrack. This moment cemented Carol as more than just a funny performer. She was now a major star capable of carrying big productions. By 1967, Carol Burnett was ready to take the biggest leap of her career. On September 11th of that year, The Carol Burnett Show premiered on CBS. At the time, variety shows were popular, but very few were hosted by women. In fact, many network executives believed that a woman couldn't carry her own variety show. Carol proved them wrong. For 11 seasons, from 1967 to 1978, the show became one of the most beloved programs in television history. Each week, over 30 million viewers tuned in, making it more than just a show, it was an event. Families across America gathered to watch Carol and her cast deliver comedy sketches, musical numbers, and unforgettable characters. The show's success was not just about numbers, though. It changed the landscape of television comedy. One of the reasons The Carol Burnett Show was so groundbreaking was its mix of comedy styles. The sketches were performed live in front of a studio audience, which gave them a unique energy. This format later inspired shows like Saturday Night Live. Carol also broke barriers by being the first woman to lead a comedy variety show at this scale. She was a pioneer, opening the door for women in television who came after her. During its run, the show won 25 Emmy Awards, 2 Golden Globes for Carol herself, and several People's Choice Awards. It was recognized for writing, choreography, and acting. The cast became legendary. Harvey Korman, Tim Conway, Vicki Lawrence, and Lyle Waggoner all played key roles in the show's success. Behind the laughter, though, there was real drama. For example, Harvey Korman, one of the show's most important performers, nearly quit during the 7th season. He became frustrated and unhappy during rehearsals, and Carol had to confront him. At first, she fired him, but after a weekend of reflection, Harvey begged for another chance. Carol gave it to him, but only if he promised to change his attitude. On Monday morning, he returned to the set skipping and whistling, as Carol had asked. From then on, they repaired their working relationship, and Harvey stayed with the show until its 10th season. Stories like this revealed Carol's leadership skills. She wasn't just a performer, she managed her cast with firmness and humor. Tim Conway was another key figure on the show, and he became known for his unpredictability. He had a rule: he never gave his best performance in rehearsals. Instead, he saved his funniest bits for the live tapings, which often threw his co-stars off. This led to moments of genuine laughter on stage that couldn't be faked. One of the most famous examples was during the "Elephant Story" sketch. Conway rambled about a ridiculous elephant tale while Carol, Vicki Lawrence, and Dick Van Dyke tried to stay in character. Eventually, Vicki Lawrence broke the scene with an unscripted line that left everyone in hysterics, including Conway himself. These moments of real laughter became part of the charm of the Carol Burnett Show. As the show grew, Carol became more than just a host. She was a mentor, a leader, and a trailblazer. She created space for women in comedy and inspired an entire generation of performers. But success also came with challenges. Her personal life was often complicated. She had married television producer Joe Hamilton in 1963, and together they had 3 daughters, Carrie, Jodie, and Erin. Their marriage was often under stress because of the demands of show business and personal struggles. Carol also faced tabloid scrutiny. In 1976, the National Enquirer published a false story claiming she was drunk in public near Henry Kissinger. Carol sued and won the case, becoming one of the first celebrities to successfully fight back against a tabloid in court. Despite personal challenges, Carol kept the show running strong. Each episode felt like an event, with guest stars ranging from musical legends to Hollywood icons. The audience interactions also became a signature part of the show. Carol would answer questions from the crowd, creating a warm, personal connection that viewers at home could feel. She also ended every show by tugging her ear, a small gesture that was actually a signal to her grandmother, letting her know she was thinking of her. This little tradition showed how much Carol's humble beginnings still shaped her, even as she stood at the height of fame. And then came 1977, the year of the sketch that Carol Burnett would never watch again. It was part of the family sketches, which had been popular with audiences for their mix of humor and dysfunction. But in this episode, titled The Gong Show, there was no humor. Carol, playing Eunice Higgins, put everything into the performance. Eunice believed she had a chance to finally break free of her small, disappointing life by singing on a talent show. But instead of achieving her dream, she was mocked and dismissed. The judges laughed at her, the audience rejected her, and the sketch ended with a heartbreaking close-up of Eunice's tear-streaked face. The silence in the studio was powerful. There was no punchline, no comforting moment. Just pain. When the episode aired, critics praised it for being brave and different. They admired Carol's ability to step away from comedy and deliver such a raw, emotional performance. But for Carol, it was too real. In later interviews, she admitted that Eunice's pain felt like her own. Growing up in poverty, chasing big dreams while people doubted her, and feeling the sting of rejection, all of it came flooding back during that sketch. She explained in a 2010 interview that it wasn't what her show was about. The Carol Burnett Show was supposed to make people laugh and forget their troubles, not remind them of heartbreak. That was why she never watched the performance again. The sketch also had a lasting legacy. It led to a 1982 television movie called Eunice and eventually inspired the spin-off sitcom Mama's Family, starring Vicki Lawrence. While Carol supported the idea at first, she later distanced herself from Mama's Family, feeling that it didn't reflect what made the original sketches so special. But the impact of that 1977 performance could not be erased. Fans remembered it as one of her bravest roles, and critics often cited it as proof that Carol Burnett was more than just a comedian. She was a true actress capable of delivering deep drama. Beyond the sketch, Carol's life continued to have ups and downs. Her marriage to Joe Hamilton ended in 1984, and she faced heartbreaking struggles with her daughter Carrie, who battled addiction before turning her life around. Tragically, Carrie died of cancer in 2002 at the age of 38. Carol has often spoken about how much she admired Carrie's strength and creativity, even during her darkest times. Despite these personal hardships, Carol never stopped performing. She appeared in stage productions, television specials, and even guest roles on shows like Glee. She continued to be recognized with Lifetime Achievement Awards, including the Presidential Medal of Freedom and the Golden Globe's Carol Burnett Award, which was named in her honor. Looking back, the 1977 sketch remains one of the most defining moments of her career, not because it was funny, but because it revealed the depth of her humanity. It showed that comedy and tragedy are often closer than we think, and that even someone who built her career on laughter carried deep scars. Carol Burnett's refusal to watch that sketch again isn't a sign of weakness, it's proof of how much truth she poured into it. For her, it was more than acting. It was a mirror of her own life, her struggles, and her resilience. And maybe that's why audiences still remember it decades later. Because it wasn't just Eunice on that stage. It was Carol Burnett herself, and the little girl from San Antonio who dreamed of something bigger. Carol Burnett is one of the most loved comedians in the world. She made millions of people laugh with her classic variety show, The Carol Burnett Show, which ran for more than a decade. But even with all the fame, applause, and awards, there is one piece of her past she has never been able to face. In 1977, she filmed an episode that left her with such deep feelings that, to this day, she refuses to watch it. This single moment has followed her throughout her long career, and it speaks to how real life often runs side by side with the entertainment world. While audiences saw her as a bright, funny, and cheerful woman, behind the curtain she was carrying struggles that no one could imagine. During this time, she was also fighting painful battles outside of her career, battles that shaped her into the strong person we know today. The late 1970s were a time when Burnett's life seemed like a mix of both incredible success and heartbreaking challenges. She was already a household name, loved for her sharp wit and her ability to make comedy out of anything. But behind the laughter, things were not easy. She found herself in a public war with the tabloids, who wrote false and hurtful stories about her. One tabloid claimed she had been drunk in public, even though she had always spoken out against alcoholism and the damage it causes. That rumor hurt deeply because Burnett's life was touched by alcohol abuse from her childhood, and she had made it a point to stand against it. She decided not to stay silent. Instead, she fought back with a lawsuit, something very rare for a celebrity at that time.